This is class number 6. A little popping noise took place during this recording. I still don't know how it happened. I want to make sure it doesn't happen again. You can still hear the lecture all right. It's just a little popping in the background, and hopefully I'll get to the bottom of it so we don't have a repeat of this problem. All right, so today we are going to go into metaphysics. And I've given you enough introduction. I mean, we could have an entire class that's just an introduction to metaphysics, but I don't want to do that because we've had 5 classes of introduction already on philosophy in general. And more than introduction, but yeah, it's a kind of introduction. So let's get straight into metaphysics. And of course, what we're doing here, I kind of call this course an easy listening intro to metaphysics. I should say an easy listening intro to philosophy. It's meant just to be easy listening, to become familiar with the terms, familiar with the concept, familiar with the structure. And then in the future, if you do study philosophy in a university setting or whatever, you'll have a lot of background, and it won't be foreign to you, and you'll understand what the teacher is saying as he's saying it, rather than waiting for a lot of the explanations. So it's an introduction to, and also it is a vital part of our heritage that's been cast aside. But let's get straight to metaphysics, okay? Now, metaphysics is the study of being as being. Can you dig it? The study of being as being. What can that possibly mean? Well, what does everything have in common? No matter what does everything have in common?
It all exists.
It all bees, as Father Woodbury used to like the term be rather than being. It all has be. So it is the most fundamental of all the sciences. And remember, it's a science. People tend to think of philosophy as just floaty ideas, but it is a science based on hard rock reality and based on observation. We start with the senses, but a man is a being, a dog is a being, a rock is a being, a tarantula is a being, the earth is a being, time is a being. And if you doubt that, if you're ever in O'Hare Airport and you have and you're trying
you're getting too
and you're trying to catch a flight from one to the other, from one side of the airport to another, and you have 4 minutes to do it.
Okay, we had 10.
All right, even so, you know time is a being. Ideas are a being. Ideas are a being. A relationship is a being. Just tell a woman that the man she's married to, she's not really married to. Okay, it's a being. It's conceptual, rooted in reality, but it's a being. Metaphysics covers all of that. Metaphysics covers all of that. The study of being as being. It also goes under 2 other names. It's called ontology. And you'll hear people say, well, this is really an ontological problem. Okay, that means it's a problem of being, a problem that's rooted in the business of existence. An ontological problem. So that is one of the names. Another name is, metaphysics is also called first philosophy. First in the sense of, it's not necessarily what a lot of people study first, because the old way you would study logic first to prepare you for metaphysics. Or in the University of Niagara, where Dr. Bennett and Dr. Waters taught, they taught philosophical psychology first, because youngsters coming in who had no background whatsoever in philosophy found it too difficult to charge straight into metaphysics. Whereas if you start with philosophical psychology, you're starting with human nature, You're starting with intellect and will. You're starting with our emotions and our passions. It's something that you can understand a little better because we have all this, because it's about what we know, which is ourselves. So they did that for the sense of just introducing the students to philosophy, using philosophical psychology as the best way that they could conceptualize the science. But it's really called first philosophy because it is the philosophy on which everything is based. Metaphysics is the science on which all of the metaphysical sciences are based, and also, whether today's scientists recognize it or not, on which all physical science is based. I've used this example before. When you mix potassium permanganate and glycerol together, oh, it's neat. You pour them in the glass, and they start to smoke, and it starts to smoke more and more and more, and becomes more active and more violent. And at one point, it bursts into flames, and then it gets so hot that it melts the glass. And it's kind of a slow combustion. Now, if you had a science that said, if you mix potassium permanganate and glycerol, you do get combustion. And if you mix potassium permanganate and glycerol, you do not get combustion. You'd have no science at all. The fact is the fact that it happens and you can say it happens means that you're also saying the opposite. And that is what the principle of non-contradiction. The thing cannot both be and not be at the same time and under the same respect. And where do we learn this? We don't learn it in physics. We don't learn it in biology. We don't learn it in zoology. We learn it in the proper teaching of metaphysics. And so that's why the true Thomist will explain that all of the natural sciences are based ultimately on philosophy, based on metaphysics. The problem is today, the philosophical sciences are thrust aside, and we only are concerned with the natural sciences, the observable, the empirical sciences. And unfortunately, those who know that, a lot of it's not their fault. They don't know it because they're not taught it. So that's what we're talking about. It is the philosophy on which all the other philosophical sciences and all natural sciences is based, the principle of non-contradiction. Another terrific example from Dr. Bennett in 1980, I forget when it was, 1986 maybe? Probably, I think it was January 1986. The space shuttle was launched, and minutes after it launched, it exploded. Everyone was killed. It was catastrophic. But President Reagan, who was president at the time, he set up a presidential commission to discover the cause of the explosion. He didn't set up a presidential commission to discover whether or not there was a cause. Okay, cause and effect, the principle of sufficient causality. Again, we don't really get that from physics. We don't really get it from biology or dentistry. We get it from metaphysics. Now, Aristotle, our good friend, Aristotle, based on reason alone, he came to conclusions that are often believed to be only conclusions you can come to through theology. He came to, through reason, he reasoned to the existence of God. He reasoned to the immortality of the human soul. He reasoned to the binding force of natural law. These are all things that philosophy teaches based on hard reasoning, based on applying the principles of non-contradiction, the principles of sufficient cause. And all of it, the philosopher starts at the same point that the scientist starts, and then even the modern philosopher starts. We start with what we observe through the five senses. And we operate on the principle that the senses are reliable. They're not deceiving us. I say that for a reason, because we're going to come into that when we talk about the problem of change. So the problem, though, is that philosophical concepts have been subverted, have been distorted, have been given new definitions by modern philosophers. And when I talk about modern, I'm talking in the last 200 to 300 years. Descartes, Kant, Hume, John Locke, Christopher Ara's friend. And what these men did is, because they don't understand the terms, they give them definitions that are different, that are weaker from what the true definition is. And then when you go to build a philosophy based on true terminology, that the definitions are wrong, then people are going to say, well, that philosophy doesn't make any sense. That philosophy doesn't hold up. An example we can give is a brick. A brick. The definition of a brick is, it is a small little block made of hardened clay for the use of building. Okay? Now, along comes the modern people, and they define brick as a small cardboard box filled with chicken feathers. Okay? So they've redefined brick, and they have entire generations understanding this new definition of brick. So that when you come along, you're the realist, and you say, I'm going to build my house, and I'm going to build it with brick, they're going to say, well, that's not going to hold up. The whole thing's going to fall apart. You're stupid. That's just like so stupid. I mean, using bricks to build a house, and they're just chicken feathers, it's just stupid. Because they're the ones, actually, who are stupid. They have been given the wrong, and so a lot of our terms, Thomistic terms, in philosophy have been redefined so that now when modern people hear them, they say, well, those things don't mean anything. Those things don't have any value. And it's because they're operating on the wrong definition of these terms rather than the proper one. We'll just quickly review one of the ones that we did already, which is the definition of knowledge. Now, we know that knowledge is the adequation of the intellect with the external thing. I perceive that this is a light bulb, and I make the judgment. I assent to the fact that this is a light bulb. And the sensors are not deceiving me. And the sense is kind of the external reality is impressing itself on my intellect by means of the senses, and I assent to that. Yes, this is a light bulb. But if you redefine knowledge in the Kantian sense, that knowledge is a combination of the external image coming in and also my own impressions in my mind that may be distorting or twisting or just kind of giving my own spin on what this thing is, then knowledge has a completely different definition. Then all of a sudden knowledge doesn't have the value that it used to. If you really want to be a strict Kantian, it does not have the value, and it does not deliver the certitude that it used to. So that's what we have. We have philosophers using the same terminology, but giving them modern, distorted, deficient, and different definitions from Aquinas. And that's why, as Edward Feser says, that when you use these terms, a lot of modern philosophers will say, well, I know about that. It's useless. That doesn't do anything for us. Because they don't have the proper definitions. So this is what we're going to do here, is give proper definitions. Now, we're going to get proper definitions of things like act and potency. Things like existence and essence. Things like hylomorphism, or the four causes: efficient causality, final causality. Okay, that's really what we're going to be covering here, those terms and those points, and to get a basic understanding of them. Now, a key concept is the concept of act and potency. And here, potency, and here we're going to go into the Greeks, because this is an instance where we take a look at the history of what happened, not for the sake of just satisfying curiosity, but understanding the history of the development of Aristotelian thought is crucial if we really understand what Aristotle was doing and how brilliant Aristotle was and the problems that he was solving. The early philosophers, I think we talked about this before, people like Thales and Heraclitus and Parmenides, they were starting to look for a rational explanation of things in the world, a rational explanation of the world. Up to that point, it was mostly what? Mythology, legend. You probably know the Greek myths better than I do.
Yeah.
As far as how the world operates, how the oceans operate, how the stars operate. Didn't Apollo pull the sun across the sky, or something like that? Or even when I was little, I mean, nobody taught this seriously, but when we heard thunder when I was very little, or either our parents or our friends would say, well, in heaven there's a big bowling alley, and the thunder is the angels bowling. Well, that's the type of explanations of the real world
that people believed,
that grown men and grown women were asked to believe. And then along come these Greek thinkers who start to penetrate into reality and say, well, wait a minute, how does the universe work? How does the earth work? How does the human being work? How does reality work? What is being? So we ended up with the first great, maybe not the first, but I believe from what I know it is the first great conundrum in this process of giving a rational explanations to things, is the problem of change. How does change happen? How does one thing turn into another thing? Because that's what we see. We see change all the time. I mean, yesterday it was sunny. Today it's raining. We see change. How does this change happen? Now, start with Parmenides. Parmenides said he was the one who really enforced the principle that being only comes from being. From non-being, you get nothing.
Okay.
All right? Being only comes from being. From non-being, you get nothing.
That's why the Big Bang Theory doesn't work.
Well, a godless Big Bang Theory that says...
First there was nothing, then it exploded.
First there was nothing, then it exploded. That's what they want us to believe. Okay? You tell... it's like... You say to someone, do you have $100? And they say, in your pocket, and they say no, and you say, take it out and give it to yourself. Okay, from non-being you get nothing. Being only comes from being. Okay, now Parmenides applies this to change, but he comes up with a kind of a strange solution to the problem of change. He points out that change requires a change of being. But there is only one, and being change. So whatever undergoes movement has to be moved by something else, has to be moved by another. But what is the only thing other than being? In his world, in his understanding, non-being.
So you can't change your be.
Right? So, and non-being can never be the source of change. non-being can never be the source of movement. So, here's the conundrum. The intellect tells us, now remember too, as Dr. Waters always says, these men were groping. These were the original thinkers working these things out. So even if they say things that seem ridiculous, you have to remember these were the pioneers. These were the original men working these things out, and there was a number of false conclusions they came to, and it was Plato who straightened a lot of things out, and then ultimately Aristotle that really straightened everything out. So what does the intellect tell us? The intellect tells us change is impossible, because the only way you can have change in being is for something else to change it, and the only other thing other than being is non-being, and non-being can't change anything, so nothing can change. But our senses tell us there is change all around us. Therefore, says Parmenides, the senses are deceiving us. Really. This was for real. The senses are deceiving us. The senses are not reliable. Everything we see regarding change is an illusion, because change is impossible, even though we see it. Well, if we see it, then and the intellect has supremacy, then the senses are fouling us up, or delivering false information, and basically what that comes down to is we can't know anything if the senses are deceiving us. Okay, so that was Parmenides. Now Heraclitus comes along, and he has a different understanding. He turns it on his head. And he says, no, the senses are delivering true information. And what we see all the time is change. Therefore, there is no such thing as anything permanent. Everything is always in a state of change. There is no fixed form of anything. Everything is in a state of change. All right? Now, so you had Parmenides saying that permanence is paramount, and you had Heraclitus saying that permanence is paramount, there is no change, it's all an illusion. And Heraclitus grappling with the same problem and saying, well, we see change, therefore everything is changing, and nothing is fixed, nothing is permanent. So Aristotle, who lived later, he realized, and this is the genius of Aristotle, again, we always talk about the ability to make clear distinctions. He didn't say what our high school friend would say, that's just stupid. I mean, I just can't believe that, because that's just stupid. No, Aristotle said, Parmenides is wrong in what he says about permanence and change, but he's not all wrong. There's something to it. Heraclitus is wrong in what he says about things always being in a state of flux, but he's not all wrong. Parmenides is right in that from non-being you get nothing. He's right. Being only comes from being. He's absolutely right. And Heraclitus is right when he says the senses are reliable. The senses are giving us true information. So how do you reconcile this problem? The change we see on a daily basis is real. Heraclitus is right. Our senses are not deceiving us. So Aristotle, as in most cases, delivers the proper solution and thus gave the foundation for all of the great Western thought and all of the great Western philosophy, act, and potency. Act and potency is not just a clever solution, it is the real solution to this problem. Now, because Aristotle will say to Heraclitus, yes, change is always there, but you can't say that nothing is fixed. And he will say to Parmenides, you're right that being only comes from being, but you are wrong to say that the only way something can change is from non-being. Now, Dr. Edward Feser, in his book, he gives the example of a red rubber ball. Okay, what is a red rubber ball? What is it? Well, it's solid, it's round, it's red,
It's squishy.
and it's bouncy. Okay, so it has all those different aspects of being as part of it. It's got those different aspects of being. And we also know, and this is an important point we'll pick up later, that the ball has ballness. It does not have horseness. It does not have rocking chair-ness. It does not have iPhone-ness. It is in no way is it a horse.
It does not have carelessness.
Or a rock.
Sorry.
It does not. It doesn't have. It's not a rock. It's not a horse. It's not a rocking chair. It is not an iPhone. Okay. So the red ball is a ball in what we say in act. It is a red ball in act, but it has the potency within it to be other features. The red ball could be a blue ball if you got out a can of spray paint and painted it. The solid ball could get soft and gooey if you heated it. The solid ball could turn into a puddle of goo, a flat puddle of goo on the floor if you melted it down completely. Okay, so these are the potencies that are in that red ball. So basically what Aristotle is saying is being and non-being are not the only relative factors. There is also the being's potentiality. The blue ball is the red ball is a red ball in act, but it has the potential within its nature to be a red ball. Potency. So, act is the being as it is. The potency is what the being has the potential to be according to its nature. And this is the key to understand how change is possible. If the ball becomes soft and gooey, it's not soft and gooey now. So in the sense that the ball's gooiness, there is a non-existence to that gooiness, but that potentiality is actualized when it's heated. Okay? That makes sense? Mm-hmm. It's actualized. But what does it require? For the ball, it requires an external influence, heat, a flame, to actualize the potentiality. Now, this is how motion happens. And it's very interesting to know from the very beginning that the philosophical definition of motion is broader than the definition of motion given in physics. For physics and the natural science, it's basically the movement of a thing from one place to another. Okay, and that's fine. That's physics. That's what physics is dealing with. It's dealing with the natural world. But motion in philosophy is synonymous with any kind of change.
Whatever undergoes motion.
Any kind of change whatsoever, whether it is a ball rolling down a hill, or a football being thrown, or the intellect going from confusion to understanding, or the leaves on the trees going from green to red. Any kind of movement whatsoever, any kind of change is defined as movement. Now, so it's a broader definition, and we'll be talking about that in the future. Now, we will discuss quickly 3 points regarding potency so that we understand better and have a more complete understanding of potency. Somebody can come along and say, okay, well, you say the ball has the potency. Well, I can conceive of a ball that has the potency to bounce to the moon. And I can I can conceive of a ball that has the potency to bounce into my room at 6:30 in the morning to wake me up. My little blue rubber ball is my alarm clock. It bounces in. And Aristotle and Aquinas would answer that by saying that any potentiality must be rooted in the thing's nature as it actually is. I'll say that again. Any potentiality must be rooted in a thing's nature as it actually is. The ball can be melted. It's got that potentiality within it. But it does not have it in its nature to bounce to the moon or to bounce into my room every morning as a kind of alarm clock, or to make me a bagel in the morning. The ball doesn't have this. So it's not any kind of potentiality. It is the potentiality that exists in the nature of a thing. Okay? A white Cadillac has the potentiality of becoming a black Cadillac if you paint it. It also has the potentiality to become a bucket of rust. A huge thing of rust if you leave it alone for long enough. But in no way does the white Cadillac or the black Cadillac have the potentiality to sprout wings and fly away on its own. Okay, these are obvious things, but they need to be said to properly understand potentiality. The second point, the potency must be actualized for change to occur. Now, especially in an inanimate thing, an external factor is required.
Could you repeat that point?
Potency must be actualized for change to occur. An external factor is required.
Potentiality.
Potency.
Potency. Thanks for correcting me.
Potency must be actualized for change to occur.
Be actualized.
Yes.
For change to occur. Wait, hold on a second.
An external factor is required. And the examples I gave already. You have to paint the red ball blue. That's an external factor. You have to apply heat to the ball to melt it. That's an external factor. The gooiness in the ball cannot actualize itself. And here's Aquinas' principle. Potency does not raise itself to act. It must be raised by something that is in act. We're always starting with act. We're always starting with is. We're always starting with be. We're always starting with the external thing, the external reality. And it's also, Professor mentions, the playing out of the principle of Aristotle and Aquinas, that whatever undergoes movement is moved by another. Okay.
Which principle is that?
It's just that's just the principle.
That's just
the principle of motion. Yeah, whatever undergoes movement is moved by another. And third, absolutely speaking, act is prior to potency. Something is. You'll never see a pure potency. You'll never see red walking down the street. You'll never see gooiness, just pure gooiness. You'll never see roundness.
It's a concept.
It's a concept.